They moved into the old house on Linden Road in early spring. A quiet neighborhood, cheap price, too good to question. The father joked that the place felt a little too quiet. The kids ran through the halls, laughing. But that night, the wind howled like something alive. And beneath it, a whisper too faint to follow, yet just loud enough to hear your name. Sarah noticed it first. A chill in the upstairs hallway. No matter how high the heat ran, the cold seemed to follow her, settling at the top of the stairs. She said it felt like someone was watching her there. They laughed it off, until the family dog stopped going near the hall. And each night after that, footsteps echoed when no one was upstairs. One night, as rain battered the windows, Michael leaned in to adjust the heater. That's when he heard it, a soft murmur rising from the vent. Not air, not pipes. A woman's voice, calling out a name that wasn't his. He jerked back, heart racing. But the sound stopped. When he told his wife, she said she'd heard it too. The children began whispering back, thinking it was some secret game. They said someone named Elsie talked to them through the closet door. At first, the parents scolded them. But when the whispering continued at night, with no one else awake, and voices came from rooms no one entered, they locked every door. Still, the whispers found a way. And Elsie, she began saying things no child could know. In the attic, buried beneath old floorboards, they found a child's bracelet, rusty, delicate, engraved with one word, Elsie. The name had never been spoken in that house. No neighbors knew of her. No record existed. And yet the children had drawn her face. A girl in old-fashioned clothes, smiling, always smiling. And every night they whispered to her, like she was standing right there. Static filled the baby monitor at midnight. Then a whisper broke through, too low to catch but rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. They unplugged the monitor. It turned back on. Every time they tried to sleep, the voice returned, always repeating the same 3 words. Until one night, the voice paused and spoke their daughter's full name. Clear, sharp, like it had always known her. The landline rang at 3:12 a.m. No caller ID, just breathing. Then a voice, slow, deliberate, whispered, "She's not yours anymore." They checked every phone in the house. None had made a call. No record. And their daughter, she'd been sleepwalking again, speaking in a language she'd never learned. When they asked what she dreamed, she said, "Elsie took me through the wall." They placed salt at every doorway, following advice from an old neighbor. For 2 nights the whispers stopped. Then came the shadows, small shifting shapes under the children's door. No one was there, but something knocked. 3 soft taps, then silence. They left every light on after that. Still, every morning the salt was scattered, and the closet door, always slightly open. Michael set up a voice recorder overnight. The next day he played it back. Static silence. Then at 2:34 a.m., a whisper, urgent and high-pitched. "Help me, she won't let me go." He played it again and again, but the voice never repeated. When he tried to share the file, it corrupted, and the recorder shattered in his drawer the next morning. Sarah stared into the bathroom mirror and watched something move behind her. No one was there, but her reflection smiled, even when she didn't. She screamed. The mirror cracked clean down the center. Later that night, her daughter whispered, "Elsie doesn't like mirrors." From then on, every mirror in the house showed a different crack. always shaped like a hand. One stormy night they heard footsteps overhead, slow, heavy, like someone pacing the roof. But it wasn't rain. It was too precise, too human. Michael went outside with a flashlight. The roof was empty, no signs of damage, but the steps followed him back inside, room to room, always a beat behind his own, like something had come down with him. Crayon letters appeared on the hallway wall. At first, childish scribbles, but soon full sentences. Let her stay. No one believes me. She hears better in the dark. They painted over it. The next morning, the words returned, written deeper, carved. The daughter swore she didn't do it. And the crayon, still locked in the drawer. Only one person in the house could write that way. And she'd been dead for decades. Sarah began sleeping more. Hours longer than normal. Too deep to wake. She'd speak in whispers while dreaming, murmuring things she never remembered. Words that sounded like prayers or warnings. Once she woke up crying. Not her tears, but a child's. The pillow soaked, though her daughter had never entered the room. That night the same child's voice said, "She's almost ready." Every clock in the house stopped at 3:12 a.m. Exactly when the first call came, no matter how many times they reset them. Each night, 3:12, then silence, then whispers. They recorded the silence and captured something stranger. A voice counting backward, from 10 to 1, and when it reached 0, their daughter sat up in bed, eyes wide open, and whispered, "She's coming." They decided to lock the spare bedroom. Too many cold spots, too many voices. They sealed the vents, boarded the windows. No one entered. But still, each morning the rocking chair moved. Sometimes it faced the door, sometimes the wall, and once it faced the hallway, like something had been watching them sleep. They never unlocked that room again. But the door rattled every night. The TV turned on by itself. No picture, just static, but layered beneath the noise were whispers, familiar voices, family voices, some who'd passed away. They spoke nonsense, then clear sentences. "Don't listen to her. She's not a child." Then the screen flickered, and a child's face appeared, smiling, unblinking. The screen cracked from the inside. No one turned it on again. Outside, the wind carried voices. Not echoes, not dreams. Actual words, names, sometimes their own. The trees bent toward the house, as if listening or protecting. Their daughter began humming a tune. No one had taught her. The same tune heard in the vents. At dusk, birds stopped landing on the roof, and the wind whispered one word louder each night. "Stay." They brought in a priest. He said prayers, blessed the rooms, left them a Bible. They placed it on the mantel. The next morning, the cover was scorched. Pages blackened, only one verse remained clear. "She walks in darkness." The priest refused to return. He said the house wasn't haunted. It was claimed, and nothing he carried could stop her. Dust covered the attic floor, thick, untouched, until one morning, they found names written in it. Dozens of them. Some they recognized. Relatives, old neighbors. Others were unfamiliar. One name repeated 3 times. Elsie, and beside it, a new name they hadn't seen before. Their daughters, written last, as if it had only just been added. One evening their daughter vanished. Not gone, just not responding. They found her locked in the bathroom, curled up in the tub, crying in silence. When she finally spoke, she said the door locked from the inside. But there was no lock, just scratch marks fresh on the inside of the door. She said she heard someone behind the mirror, whispering, "I'm not finished yet." The daughter began to draw more. Pages and pages. Not flowers, not animals, but rooms every angle of the house. And people no one else could see. Always the same figure in every sketch. A girl in shadow, hair covering her face, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, and always standing right behind her family. A floorboard creaked in the living room, but no one was there. Michael pried it loose and found a small tin box beneath. Inside, children's teeth yellowed and cracked, and a letter, faded, illegible except one line. She collects what they leave behind. They buried the box in the woods. But that night, the floor creaked again, and the whispers got louder. Their daughter refused to sleep in her room. She said the voices came from under the bed. Michael looked nothing, but when he lifted the mattress, someone had scratched her name into the wood. Dozens of times, overlapping, clawed and deep. That night she slept on the floor, but still woke up screaming, claiming she'd been pulled by the ankles, by something that said, "Welcome home." At 3:12 a.m., Sarah saw movement outside. Someone or something standing in the yard, not moving, staring at the house. She turned on the porch light. No one, but every night after, the same shape returned, a silhouette tall and still. Until one night, it was inside the house, and left wet footprints, leading toward the spare room. They thought was sealed. A thin scratch appeared across Sarah's shoulder. She thought it was from the attic, but the mark deepened overnight, then burned, no matter what she applied. The wound bled at exactly 3:12 a.m. Doctors found nothing wrong, just old scar tissue, like it had been there for years. But Sarah knew that scratch wasn't from this world, and it wasn't meant to heal. Michael played one of the old recordings backward. The whisper was still there, clearer, louder, and it wasn't just a message. It was a warning. Keep her here, she belongs to the quiet. They stopped playing recordings after that, but the daughter began whispering in reverse. In her sleep, perfectly, each word colder than the last, as if something else was speaking through her. A family photo once framed in the hallway. Challenged. No one noticed at first, until Sarah saw an extra figure. A small girl, standing in the back. Black dress, blank stare. They checked old copies, she wasn't there before. The next night another photo changed. Then another, and in each one, the girl moved closer, always facing the daughter. The daughter stopped answering to her name. Not out of defiance. She genuinely didn't seem to remember it. She said, "I have another name now." When asked what it was, she just smiled, whispered something too soft to catch. At night, she'd write symbols on her wall. Not letters, not drawings, but something older. The last symbol matched one they'd seen. In the attic, Sarah heard a dripping sound in the bathtub, but it hadn't been used. When she leaned close, a voice echoed from the drain. "I see you." Water gushed from every faucet. Freezing cold. The bathroom steamed with breath, though she was alone. And in the mirror, a handprint appeared, small, wet, pressed from the inside. Then, 3 soft knocks from under the sink. During a blackout, they lit a single candle. The daughter stared into the flame, murmuring again, this time in two voices. One was hers, the other, a low rasp. She said, she's here, she sees us now. The flame stretched unnaturally tall, then blew out though no wind stirred. In total darkness, a voice whispered, we don't need light to watch you. Hidden behind a loose brick, they found an old diary, dated 1891, written by a girl named Elsie. It spoke of voices in the vents, shadows in the mirror, and a mother who didn't believe her. The final page read, she said she'd never leave me. Now I never leave her. The ink ended mid-sentence, but the pen still sat inside, warm to the touch. Then suddenly silence. No whispers, no movement. Days passed. They thought it was over, but something was wrong. Too quiet, as if the house were holding its breath. Then came the scream. Not human, a sound that rattled the windows, shook the walls, and burst every bulb at once. From the silence, something woke up, and it was no longer hiding. The daughter began sleepwalking again, but with her eyes open, wide, unblinking, staring straight ahead. She'd speak in full sentences, then forget them by morning. One night she walked to the mirror and said, it's almost time. When they tried to stop her, she screamed, a voice not her own, low, broken, and it called Michael, by his childhood nickname. In desperation, they built a soundproof room. No vents, no mirrors, just silence. They moved the daughter in. For one night it worked. No voices, no movement, until 3:12 a.m. The walls trembled, the floor cracked, and she began laughing. Not her laugh, but Elsie's from the old recordings. Then she whispered, she says you made her wait too long. Black water poured from the kitchen tap. Thick, oily. The plumber said the pipes were fine, but no one could explain the smell. Sweet like decay. They bottled some to test. The next morning the bottle shattered. The liquid gone, but in its place, a small doll, handmade, stitched with red thread, and one word across its chest. Elsie. They heard scratching beneath the floor. Not rats. Too slow. Too methodical. Michael lifted the boards again. Nothing, but the scratching followed him, room to room, until it stopped, beneath their bed. That night the daughter whispered, she's not under the house. She's under me. And in the silence, they heard breathing, from beneath the mattress. By now they'd accepted it. The house was no longer theirs. Their daughter no longer alone inside herself. The voices weren't haunting them. They were teaching her, preparing her. And the last whisper, spoken through the vents, said, she's almost ready to remember what she was before. That's when they realized this wasn't possession. It was reunion. In the basement behind rotting shelves, they found an old trunk locked tight with rusted chains. No keyhole, no label, but the daughter said, it's mine. They left it untouched. That night the chains unraveled on their own, and the lid opened slowly, revealing nothing but darkness. The next morning the daughter had dirt under her nails, and a new voice in her sleep. Sarah woke with a start, and noticed something above the bed. Hundreds of names scrawled across the ceiling in soot, all unfamiliar, except one, hers. Each night more names appeared. One morning the ceiling was blank again, as if wiped clean. But when she turned off the lights, They glowed faintly, and all the names began whispering in unison. Tickle, tickle, tickle. A sound echoed through the hallways, not from clocks, but from the walls, like a giant watch counting down. It grew louder every night, ending precisely at 3:12 a.m. Then silent, then scratching, until the daughter said, "When the ticking stops, that means I can finally go home." But they didn't know where home really was. They studied the house's blueprints and found something wrong. A small space between two bedrooms, no door, no access. The daughter called it Elsie's room. They cut through the wall. Inside, a child's bed, a rotting teddy bear, and handprints on every surface. The dust was still settling, as if someone had just been there. And in the corner, a second doll staring back. Sarah began dreaming in static. Not images, just sound. Blinding white noise that bled into her ears. She woke with nosebleeds, hands trembling. Then one night, she heard a voice through the static. Not Elsie. Older, colder. She was just the first. Now she brings the rest. That night the static didn't stop, even when she was awake. Michael searched old town records. He found a girl named Elsie. Died in 1892. No grave, no cause, but tied to his great-great-grandfather. A judge, the one who condemned her mother to death. For witchcraft, Michael never believed in curses, until he saw his name on a list of descendants. Everyone died before 40, except him, and now, his daughter. One night the stars disappeared. No clouds, no moon. Just black sky, as if something massive hovered above them. The daughter stood outside barefoot. She whispered, "She's almost finished building the way." The air was too still, too silent, and in the dark, dozens of whispers rose. All different, all overlapping. It wasn't just Elsie anymore. They had all come back. Behind the basement furnace, Michael discovered a crawl space. Too tight for an adult, but clearly used. He shined a flashlight in. Dozens of small toys lined the walls. And one more doll, identical to the others. Only this one had real hair. He called for help, but the light flickered, and from the shadows, a whisper answered, "She doesn't like when you look." Every journal entry Sarah wrote faded overnight. Words vanished from the page, replaced with strange symbols. Then one message appeared, burned into the paper. Memory is a trap. She tried recording herself speaking. The audio reversed itself, playing only the phrase, "You forgot the promise." She didn't remember making one, but her daughter did, and she was already keeping it. At dawn, Sarah saw her daughter's shadow on the wall, but it moved differently. It lagged behind, twitched, then split in two. One shadow smiled. The other stood still. Now every mirror reflected both. One child, two shadows. When she asked about it, the daughter replied, "One of them is me. The other is the one I used to be." And both turned to watch her. Michael filmed his daughter sleeping, to prove the voices weren't real. At 3:12 a.m., her mouth didn't move, but another breath came, louder, deeper. The air frosted, and behind her, a shape formed in the dark. He froze the video frame. A figure stood by the bed. No face, just a mouth, and the breath it exhaled left a name on the glass. They begged the priest to return. He agreed, but only under one condition. They must not speak her name. He walked through the house with incense. Whispers followed him. When he entered the daughter's room, she whispered too late. He collapsed. His crucifix melted in his hand. Before leaving, he said only one thing. She isn't inside your child. She's building something through her. They called a paranormal investigator. He set up audio sensors. All channels recorded silence. But the live feed played something else. Crying, a lullaby in reverse. Then the daughter's voice saying, "Dead air makes it easier." Every speaker exploded. The room stank of sulfur. And where the sensors once sat were ash circles and a note written in childlike scrawl. Almost done. Sounds of crunching echoed at night. They broke open a wall to find the source and found it lined with shattered glass. Hundreds of tiny shards, each with a reflection. All showed different angles of the house. And one reflection showed a girl standing behind them. No one else was in the room. And in that reflection, they were the ones made of glass. The daughter said her eye felt different. Doctors found nothing. But at night, her right eye turned black. But she could see in total dark, and claimed to know who was whispering. She's the first voice, she said. She used to whisper from the earth. Now she whispers from me. The eye didn't blink anymore. And when she smiled, her voice echoed. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the hallway clock began to tick backward. Slowly, relentlessly, Michael tried to stop it. Unplugged it, removed the battery. But the ticking continued. Then the hands reversed again. Faster this time. The daughter smiled and said, "When it hits midnight going backward, that's when she steps through." The ticking never stopped after that, and time inside the house bent with it. The daughter began drawing floor plans, but not of their home, of a place no one recognized. A house underground, with no doors, only walls and whispers. When asked what it was, she whispered, "That's where she keeps the rest of them." Each room was labeled with names. One matched Sarah's. Another was blank. The daughter said, she hasn't decided who goes there yet. Dust never settled in the living room anymore. It moved, in slow spirals like something breathing beneath it. One night it shaped into letters. Just one phrase. She remembers now. When they tried to clean it, the vacuum sparked and spit the dust back out. Only now it whispered when disturbed. Like tiny mouths, chattering all at once. Every night 3 knocks. Always at 3:12 a.m. Never louder, never less. They checked doors, walls, pipes, nothing. Until one night it came from the daughter's closet. Michael opened it slowly. Empty, except for her shoes. Pointed inward. The daughter whispered, "That's how she knocks. 3 is how she says yes." They stopped answering knocks after that. Michael stared into the hallway mirror and saw no one behind him. But his reflection wasn't moving, frozen, staring back with blank eyes. Then it smiled, just as Michael turned away. From that day on, his reflection lagged behind him. By seconds, then minutes, until one night, it disappeared completely. And in the mirror's place, a message etched in breath. He's inside now. The daughter refused to sleep near her window. She said voices floated in. Not from outside, but from below. They called her by names she didn't know. One night Sarah sat beside her. At 3:12 frost covered the window. Then fingerprints. From the inside. And a whisper. clear as breath. She's ours again. You never should have brought her back. The wallpaper peeled on its own. Just a small corner at first. Then more, revealing handprints beneath. Pressed into the wall like clay. Each one child-sized. Some had fingernails. Michael stripped an entire wall. Found dozens of them layered in rows. And written between. She listens through the walls. The daughter traced one print and said, "This one's still warm." Laughter echoed through the vents. Not playful, mocking. It bounced from room to room. Never stopping. The daughter started laughing in sync. Eyes closed. At one point, Sarah screamed for it to stop. And it did. Instantly. Then a whisper followed. She doesn't like when you interrupt. The laughter didn't return that night. But the crying did. Sarah kept a journal to track the events. One morning, she found new entries. In her handwriting. Pages she never wrote. Descriptions of dreams she never had. She tried to burn it. It wouldn't catch fire. The last page read, "You knew me before. You let her in." The ink was still wet, and her hands smelled of smoke. Doctors checked the daughter's vitals. Healthy, normal. Except one thing. Her heartbeat slowed every night. And stopped. For exactly 12 seconds. She didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Then resumed like nothing happened. Sarah timed it. And realized. Each silence lined up with the whispers. The longer the silence, the louder they became. Like they were filling the gap. Where life paused. They stopped speaking to each other. The tension unnatural. Fights erupted over nothing. Blame twisted into paranoia. Sarah found notes she didn't remember writing. Michael heard her voice. From rooms she wasn't in. They began locking their doors. Each kept secret recordings. Each suspected the other. The house didn't haunt them. It divided them. And the daughter. She stopped speaking completely. While repairing a broken beam, Michael discovered something buried in the wall. A bone, small, human. He called the authorities. They never came. The call dropped mid-sentence. When he returned to the wall, the bone was gone. In its place, a tiny tooth, clean and white. And etched above it, she remembers how she died. Now she wants to remember. Who let it happen? At night, the daughter sat in the hallway, speaking to the empty air. Except it wasn't empty. Sarah filmed her, and saw flickers, faces, children silent and still. Each night more appeared. Their eyes never blinked. She asked the girl, "Who are they?" The daughter whispered, "They came back because of me." But she brought them. She always brings them. When it's almost time. In the fogged mirror, a number appeared, 1892. The year Elsie died. But below it, another number scratched itself in. 2025. Sarah gasped. That was this year. The daughter touched the mirror and whispered, "1 year to open. 1 night to cross. 1 name to stay." Then the mirror shattered, cutting her hand, and her blood formed 3 perfect circles. They woke up to find something missing. The front door, gone, just smooth wall. No hinges, no knob. They tried windows, bricked over, phones dead. It wasn't just isolation. The house had sealed itself. And the daughter said calmly, "She said we wouldn't need to leave anymore. She's almost ready." I can feel her behind my eyes. They weren't trapped in the house. The house was in them. The cut on the daughter's hand never healed. Instead, it pulsed, as if whispering, One night Sarah held her hand close and heard it, a voice soft but ancient. She carried me once. Now I carry her. The blood moved against gravity, tracing symbols on the wall. The daughter didn't cry. She smiled and whispered. It's how she talks when the skin forgets. Michael walked into the hallway and came out in the same hallway. Again and again, the house looped. Rooms repeated, but objects shifted. Furniture aged. Walls bled names. And every fifth loop, his reflection disappeared. He screamed. The house echoed back. But it wasn't his voice. It was the Judge S. His ancestor, saying the same phrase. She must finish what you denied. The recorder they'd buried reappeared. On the kitchen table. Intact. Still recording. Sarah pressed play. The voice was hers. But she'd never spoken those words. It said, I brought her back. I made the call. Then the whisper. She never forgot her mother. Sarah dropped the device. But it kept playing. Faster no. Repeating one phrase. You remembered too late. At 3:12 the daughter levitated. Only inches, but long enough to cast no shadow. Her eyes rolled back. She whispered in reverse. Not words, commands. The walls pulsed in sync. And when she lowered back down, the floorboards bent inward beneath her. Michael tried to wake her. She smiled and said, she let me borrow her breath. So now I help her breathe again. Photographs stopped developing properly. Faces blurred, eyes missing, some photos printed upside down. And always, a figure in the background. Long dress, head bowed. They burned the prints. But ash formed new images. Still her, still watching. The daughter said, she doesn't like being seen. But she needs to be remembered. From then on, cameras only captured the empty parts of the room. Sarah caught her daughter speaking in her voice. Exact tone, exact words, reciting things only she had said. From years ago. It wasn't mimicry. It was memory. The daughter said, she lets me wear you sometimes. Then left. That night Michael swore Sarah said things she didn't remember. And for a moment, he wasn't sure who was really speaking from her mouth. Their wall calendar faded overnight. Dates blurred, holidays gone, all except one, October 31st. It glowed faintly in the dark, no matter how many times they tore it down. The calendar reappeared. Same month, same circle. The daughter circled it in blood and whispered, that's when the wall opens. That's when she comes back for good. They never found another calendar again. The basement thumped. Not pipes, not echoes, a heartbeat, low and slow. Measured. It vibrated through the floor. Sarah pressed her hand to the wall. Felt it pulse beneath her skin. The daughter stood nearby. Eyes closed, hands raised. She's resting, she said. But she'll wake when the heart stops. Or when someone else's begins. Sarah called out, but the echo answered first. Her voice, slightly off. Then it whispered a different name. A name she didn't remember, but recognized. The daughter said, it's your name from before, when she carried you. From that moment, Sarah stopped speaking aloud, afraid the echo might respond again, with things she wasn't ready to remember. The whispers stopped. Total silence. No voices in the vents. No breathing in the closet. The daughter said, she's listening now. Not speaking. For 3 days. The house remained still. Too still. Then, without warning, Every vent burst open, and a voice boomed, not whispered, "She is here." The walls cracked, and beneath their feet, something began to rise. No one slept, even when they tried. Their eyes refused to close. The daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, blinking in perfect rhythm. Michael counted, one blink every 6 seconds. Then none. Her eyes stayed open for hours, staring at the ceiling. Then she whispered, "I don't need to sleep anymore. She dreams for both of us now." They found a door they didn't remember. In the hallway, no knob, just hinges new, polished. When they opened it, there was no room, just a wall of black stone, carved into it. One must stay. Sarah touched it. Her hand went through, cold, wet, and behind it, a whisper from the other side said, "You were meant to return." Michael dreamed of the judge, his ancestor, in robes, standing over a girl. The sentence echoed, burned for betrayal, buried in silence. He woke to ash in his bed, and a child's voice whispering, "You carry his blood, so you carry her wrath." In the mirror, he saw the judge's face, and beneath it, his own. The daughter finally spoke her real name. Not Elsie, but Amara, a name no one in the family knew. Sarah searched it. Only one record. A girl who vanished in 1891. No grave, no photo, just one line in the town archives. Returned by fire, reclaimed in blood. The daughter whispered, "That's who she was, before she chose me." At night they heard it, the sound of dirt being moved. Not outside, beneath the floor, shovels scraping, hands digging. The daughter slept through it all, smiling. One morning they found earth under the rug, wet, fresh, and in the soil, a ribbon, the same color Elsie wore, still warm, and tied in a knot no one had touched. Sarah watched her daughter sleep, but something felt wrong. The way her chest rose too slow, the silence between breaths too deep. Then the girl opened her eyes and whispered, "I'm not the one you raised." Her voice was layered, two tones overlapping. Sarah reached for her. The girl pulled away and said, "She's still in here, but she doesn't want to come back." On the basement wall, a single name etched itself in blood. Fresh, alive, Sarah, the last name on the list. She scrubbed it, painted it, but it returned, deeper each time. The daughter stood behind her and said, "You're the gate. That's why she kept you close." Sarah stepped back, and the name pulsed, as if it had a heartbeat. Cracks spread across the basement floor. Like veins, each night they grew, branching like roots toward the stairs. A sound pulsed from beneath, low, rhythmic like chanting. Michael poured concrete over them. By morning the cracks had returned. Wider, hungrier, the daughter placed her hand on one, and whispered, "This is where she'll rise. This is where I'll meet myself." The daughter described a memory. A fire in a cabin. A scream in a language long dead. But she had never been there. Sarah realized the story matched a diary entry from 1892. A memory that belonged to Elsie. The girl said, "She gave it to me, so I'd know how it felt." And in her eyes, Sarah saw the flicker of someone else. Michael stood at the attic door. Inside, silence. Outside, whispers. He knew what the voice wanted. Him to trade himself, to end the bloodline. He whispered, "Take me instead." For a moment, the house sighed, then laughed. "You don't decide. She already has. And in the mirror, his daughter's reflection turned away and didn't come back. That night the walls turned warm, then hot. Smoke leaked from outlets. Flames danced behind glass. But nothing burned. It was the memory of fire, the one that ended Elsie's life, now reborn in wood and wire. The daughter said, she never forgot. Now she makes you remember. And in the wallpaper, faces scrimed, frozen in flame. The daughter began whispering family secrets, private things no child could know. Michael's childhood sin, Sarah's buried guilt, each revealed without emotion. Then she said, she told me. She hears what you hide. They tried to stop her. She spoke louder, and the walls echoed their shame. Their past was no longer private. It belonged to something ancient. And now, so did their future. The hallway mirror cracked again, then peeled, like skin. Glass flaked off in curls, revealing a second surface beneath. Black, glossy, pulsing. The daughter approached it, touched it, and her reflection didn't match. It moved slower, smiled wider, then reached through. Sarah screamed. The daughter whispered, that's where I came from. She gave me back to you. Then the glass shattered. The calendar flipped itself, page by page, until only one remained. October. The daughter began counting down days. Every night at 3:12 a.m. She whispered one less. Sarah asked, what happens when it hits 0? She replied, then the door opens, and she gets to finish her story. By then, the house no longer creaked. It breathed. The whispers grew layered. Dozens of voices. Children, mothers, a man crying, all speaking through the daughter. She didn't move her lips, yet the voices echoed from her chest. Bring her home. Let her finish. Let the gate open. Sarah wept. Michael knelt, and the daughter opened her mouth, wide, unnatural, to let the final voice speak. They traced every symbol, every name. It always led back to one thing. Blood. Elsie wasn't just a spirit. She was a key, a ritual unfinished, passed through generations, and now complete. The daughter said she was waiting for a vessel. You made one, and on the floor, the circle glowed, bound in names, bound in fear, and at the center, the cracks in the basement split wide. From them rose wind, cold and dry. And then hands, small, hundreds, pulling at the air. They clawed upward, but touched nothing. The daughter stood above them, smiling. They come to remember. They rise when the forgetting ends. Michael backed away, but the floor shifted beneath him, and his name was called. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't whispering. It was both, a layered sound that shook the walls. Sarah covered her ears, but still heard it inside her head. The daughter said, that's the sound of no return. In the house, shifted, tilted, as if reality itself had grown thin. A voice bled through the walls. You opened the mouth. Now speak the name. All went quiet again. One final time. Then a whisper low and long. Sarah. It came from the daughter's lips, but not her voice. A woman's, tired, triumphant. Sarah said nothing, because deep down, she remembered. She had once whispered that name too, to something in the dark. A promise made, and now, fulfilled. From the outside, the house stood silent, calm, just another home. But inside, nothing was left of them. Just echoes, just names. Visitors came. Some left, some stayed forever. The front door opened again, and someone else moved in. They thought it was empty. They were wrong, because the house doesn't haunt. It remembers, and now it waits. On the night of October 31st, the house trembled. Floorboards moaned like lungs. The cracks in the basement split wide, forming a perfect circle. At its center, the daughter stood, arms outstretched. She whispered, "She's ready to step through." A light poured upward, not warm, not holy. A scream echoed backward, and the voice said, "This is not the end. It is the return." Sarah remembered, not in dreams, in flashes, a field, a trial, a fire. She saw herself centuries ago, not as Sarah, but as the one who stood and watched Elsie burn. Not the judge, not the executioner, the betrayer, the one who promised safety, then looked away. She whispered, "I'm sorry," and from below, Elsie whispered back, "You always say that too late." Michael reached for his daughter, but she stepped back. "I know who I am now." Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. "She needs a home." And I was empty. The light behind her pulsed. Hands reached through. Michael said, "You can still choose." The girl shook her head. "I already did." When I answered the first whisper, the house screamed, not from outside, from its bones. Walls buckled, doors twisted, the air filled with ash. Sarah clutched her chest. Something was breaking inside her. The daughter said, "You carried her without knowing. She's just going home." Then the light vanished. The circle closed, and everything, every whisper, every voice, went silent. They awoke in a house that looked the same, but wasn't. No clocks, no sound. Outside, the world didn't move. Time had stopped. Michael stepped outside, and stepped back into the same room. Sarah looked at the daughter. She was smiling, and in her voice, no whisper, just silence. "I brought us home," she said. But none of them remembered the way back. The last voice recorder blinked red. Still recording. Sarah played it. Static. Then her own voice. From that night, the first whisper. Only this time it ended differently. A question. "Would you let her in again?" The recorder clicked off, and in the silence, a voice answered, not hers. Yes. The device shattered, and the daughter's shadow grew longer than the room could hold. New people arrived. They called it a great deal. Beautiful house, freshly renovated. They never asked why it sat empty. The family welcomed them politely. The daughter offered tea. Sarah smiled too wide, and Michael simply watched, because they weren't just a family anymore. They were keepers, and the whispers, they never truly left. They just waited for someone else to listen. The new owners found markings beneath the paint. Circles, symbols, names they didn't recognize. One night, their child began drawing them too. No one taught her, but she said they were already in the walls. At night, she whispered into the vents, smiling, and outside her door, salt lines began to scatter. Just like before, the cycle began again. Voices in vents, footsteps above, names in dust. Only now, the house didn't resist. It guided them. Each room had purpose. Each whisper had rhythm. The child was chosen faster. The marks returned sooner. And in the attic, a new trunk appeared. already unlocked, already open, already full. The doll reappeared, stitched with red thread, different face, but the same black eyes. It sat in the new child's bed. No one placed it there. The mother threw it out. It returned, this time with her child's name across the chest. And a whisper, "She's almost ready." The same voice, from all those years before. The girl, now host, no longer remembered who she was before. She answered only to the name Elsie. The voice, the smile, even her walk, belonged to another time. Sarah knew then. This wasn't survival. This was transformation. A quiet possession, done over years. And once complete, there would be no struggle. Only silence. And the house would rest. For a while, everything returned to the way it began. The laughs, the whispers, the wind through vents. Neighbors waved. The family smiled. And every night, at 3:12 a.m., the house woke up. For most, it was just creaks and groans. But for those inside, it was breath. The house was alive. And memory was its favorite game. Someone took a photo during a family visit. Later, they zoomed in. Everyone was smiling, except for the little girl. She was staring straight into the lens. And behind her, in the reflection of the window, stood a woman in old clothes. No eyes, just a smile. The photo blurred the next day. But the memory stayed, and the whispers began again. The door in the hallway never shut again. No matter how hard they tried, it remained open, just slightly, and from within, cold air whispered through. The daughter sat near it, waiting. One night she whispered, "She never leaves. She just waits for the next one." And the door creaked wider, without a touch. The final night came quietly. No screaming, no fire, just stillness. At 3:12 a.m., the house took one deep breath. Inward, and everything inside. Dimmed, lights, voices, people. The house didn't exhale. It kept what it wanted. The rest faded, and somewhere inside its walls, a new whisper began. Soft, curious, asking just one question. Who's next? The new family's son began sleep-talking. Whispers, in a girl's voice. He spoke of fire, of silence, and a woman who stood at the foot of his bed. He said her name was Elsie. When asked where he heard it, he simply said, "She told me. She said I could help next time." The house stirred again, like it approved. They checked the vents. Just air. But at night the wind carried voices. Not distant, right beside the ear. The boy leaned close and listened, smiled, and whispered back. Each morning he drew the things they told him. Places, symbols, a doll with human hair. The same drawings from decades ago. Now in new hands. The house never needed to change. Only the vessel. The parents began hearing crying on the baby monitor. They didn't have a baby. It came every night. At 3:12 a.m. They unplugged it. Still it wept. One night the mother followed the sound to the attic. Empty, but on the floor, a rattle, old and cracked, with dried blood in the grooves. She picked it up, and someone behind her whispered, "Too late again." The fridge iced over. Not food, the inside walls. Etched into the frost were names. Some faded, some fresh. Their son's name was there too. They defrosted it. But the next morning, the ice returned thicker. Now with two new names. Hers and his, underlined in red. The ice never melted again. The water in the tub wouldn't drain. It swirled slowly, as if something below watched back. The father leaned in and saw eyes, blinking, human, then gone. They called a plumber. He pulled out long strands of hair, black, braided with red thread. He never returned. And that night, the tub filled on its own. Lights flickered in the hallway. Nothing unusual, but their shadows stayed after they walked away, hung on the walls like stains, unmoving. One night the father touched his shadow. It didn't match. The hands were wrong. The shape too thin. He turned off the light. It stayed. They never turned them off again. They read aloud from an old book found in the basement. A page with no words, just lines. The room echoed back, but not the same sentence. It answered, in full thought, and every answer ended with the same phrase. She is still inside the walls. They closed the book, but the room kept whispering, even when no one spoke. They found a drawer in the kitchen filled with teeth. Baby teeth, old, yellowed. One had initials carved into it. None they recognized. The boy said, "She collects them when they leave." They threw them out. The next day, they were back, multiplied, and a note sat beside them. Trade accepted. The new family tried to move, packed their bags, loaded the car, but the road led back to the house, no matter the turn. They walked, same result. The son whispered, "She told me where to hide the end." And behind the house, the sky bent, folded inward, a loop, a trap, a home that would never let them go. They painted the walls white. Fresh start, but by morning, scratches bled through. Letters, names, numbers that didn't follow time. They painted again, and again. Still the messages returned. The son said, "She writes through memory." And memory, the house never forgot. They stopped painting. The walls were hers now. The doll changed again. Not in shape, in inscription. The thread spelled a new name. Theirs, both parents. The boy laughed. She wants a family again. The doll moved from room to room, always beside their bed in the morning, always watching. They stopped touching it. But one day, it disappeared, and the boy wouldn't say where it went. Their son drew the house, always in flames, every window screaming. When they asked why, he said, "Because it already happened. I'm just remembering." He burned every drawing after. But the image returned. On mirrors, on frost, on the back of his hands. His art was no longer his. It was the past, blading forward. They heard a soft voice at night, from beneath their son's bed. He said it was a friend. She lives in the dust. One night they looked, and found a nest of hair, teeth, and a ribbon. It moved. They sealed the room. But the next night, the voice came from beneath their bed. Smiling, it said, "We all sleep somewhere." One night no one heard the voice. The house stood still, too still. Then the boy whispered, "She's listening again. She waits before she chooses." Every window blacked out. Every clock stopped. In the house, held its breath. Then one soft whisper. Almost, just that, but it said everything. The next name was coming. And the house was already watching. The story was never about one family. Not even two. It was about the house, and the voice that lived within. It changed faces, names, rooms, but it never left. Because the voice is not a ghost. It's memory, and memory never dies. So when a new family asks, "Did anything strange ever happen here?" the walls whisper, "No," and the cycle begins again. One day the wind stopped. Birds vanished. No cars passed. Even the dust froze midair. The family stood still, unsure if they were the only ones left. Then the sun said, "She's holding time again. She's deciding." And in that quiet, a door opened, on its own, but there was no room behind it. Only a hallway they had never built. Inside the hallway, they saw portraits, painted by hand. Each showed them, not as they were now, but as they might become, aging in reverse, smiling too wide, wearing clothes from another century. In the last frame, they were gone, just the house, with the front door open, and a new figure arriving. A young girl, already whispering. A lullaby began to echo at night, played on no instrument, familiar yet wrong, each note off by just enough to unsettle. The son hummed it unconsciously, then began singing in his sleep, in a voice not his own. When asked where he learned it, he said, "It's hers. She taught me from under the floor." And the tune kept playing, even after sunrise. They poured salt across thresholds, every doorway, every window, just like before. But one night, it vanished. No footprints, no breeze, just gone. And beneath the door, a new mark carved into the floor. A spiral. The sun touched it and said, "Salt doesn't stop memory." Then the lights went out, and the house felt smaller. The boy began speaking in his father's voice. Tone, rhythm exact. He recited things never said aloud. Private fears, old regrets. The father begged him to stop. The boy said, "She doesn't need your words, just your weakness." Then smiled, and from that night on, they both began speaking, in voices that no longer felt like their own. All the mirrors cracked at once, not shattered, just hairline fractures. Each one curved into a pattern, a spiral. They turned every mirror to the wall. But still, at night they reflected things that weren't in the room. A hand, a smile, a key, and one phrase etched backwards. "She's behind your eyes now." The walls began to breathe. In, out, in again. The sound was subtle, but once heard, never unheard. The floorboards pulsed, the ceiling expanded, and the sun whispered, "She's learning to live here." Without us, they tried to sleep, but the breath followed, slower now, deeper, as if the house was dreaming. The grandfather clock stopped ticking, then lost its hands entirely. But it still chimed, once per night at 3:12. No time marked, but always that sound. The sun said, "She took time. Now it belongs to her." They tried to cover the clock. It rang anyway, until one night, the sound came from inside the walls instead. When they pressed their ears to the walls, they heard voices, not whispers, conversation from the past, arguments, laughter, crying. None of them were theirs, but they felt familiar. The house remembered every word ever spoken inside it, and played them back at will. A museum of memory. And now, they were part of the exhibit. The house didn't just remember. It learned new tricks, new ways to keep them inside. It locked doors when they weren't looking, shifted walls when they tried to map it. It grew smarter, faster, hungrier, and in the vents, a whisper said, Why leave? You were built for this. And they began to wonder if they ever really moved in, or just woke up here. A painting above the mantel began to bleed. Not paint, blood, dark, old, and warm. It leaked down the wall in slow rivulets. The image changed, became a portrait of their son, but older, eyes missing, mouth stitched shut. The boy stared at it and said, "She's practicing, getting better." They burned the painting, but the walls still bled. One window no longer showed their backyard. Instead, a forest, dead trees, fog. At first they thought it was a trick, until they opened the window and felt the cold, heard breathing, and something whispered, "You've seen my side. Now show me yours." They boarded it shut, but some nights, the fog crept in through the cracks. One morning their son didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't breathe, for over 2 minutes. Then sat up, said, "She borrowed me. I'll be back," and lay back down. They waited. He eventually woke, but something was gone. A slowness in his eyes, an echo behind every word. He was no longer alone inside himself. The crawlspace they sealed reopened overnight. Not forced, unlatched, empty except for the doll. Now larger, its arms longer, its eyes deeper. It sat facing the wall. But when touched, it turned on its own, and in the hollow cavity of its back, a recording played. "She knows you now." Then silence, and the house held its breath again. The hallways shrank, the ceilings dipped, rooms felt tighter. The family moved slower, as if gravity thickened. The son said, "She's pulling the house inward, folding it into memory." They tried to escape. Every path returned to the center. The crawl space, the circle, the voice, and when they reached it, the walls whispered, "Welcome back." They found a hatch beneath the floorboards, one they never noticed. When opened, it led to a room that shouldn't exist. Stone walls, no light, no sound, only a chair, and on it, a child's dress. Old, still warm. The son said, "This is where she began. This is where she ends." But the walls whispered back, "There is no end." Outside, the sun rose twice. The first was warm, the second wrong. It cast shadows in the opposite direction. The family stood at the window, frozen. The son said, "She's reflecting now, turning the world into her own." Birds flew backward. Clouds didn't move. And beneath it all, the house smiled, wood groaning like laughter. A voice returned. The first voice, the one that called to Sarah years ago. Now it asked again, only this time to the boy, "Will you let her in?" He said nothing, but the air thickened. The floorboards buckled, and the voice said, "Silence is yes." The boy closed his eyes, and the house exhaled. For the first time in years, every window showed a reflection, not of the room, but of watchers, dozens, children, women, faces pressed to the glass from the inside. The family tried to board them up, but the watchers remained, blinking in unison, smiling when no one else did. The boy whispered, "They were always here. We just finally see them." The boy awoke with a small cut on his palm, shaped like a kid. It bled in rhythm. Each night, a drop fell into the cracks of the floor, and each time, the door in the hall opened wider. One night, he said, "She gave me the key, because I remember her better than you ever did." And the house pulsed like it agreed. The dust no longer gathered. It formed shapes, words, a language none could read. Except the boy. He traced it with his finger and smiled. "She's writing to me," he said. "She says I'm almost ready." The parents wept, but the house, it quieted, listening. The dust began to spell their names. And one word beneath them. Relinquish. They heard chimes deep echoing, but had no clock tower nearby. From the attic window, they saw it, a black spire tall and crooked, rising from behind the house. It hadn't been there yesterday. The boy said, "That's where she keeps time now." Every chime reversed the shadows, and with each toll, the house grew colder. Sarah's reflection began to fade, a little more each day. At first just her outline, then her face. She spoke less, slept less, until one morning, the boy called her Elsie, and she didn't correct him. Michael begged her to fight it. She whispered, "I think I always knew. This house didn't want me. It wanted to remember itself." They opened the old room again. The one sealed years ago. Now filled with voices. No bodies, just sound, memories trapped in echo. Every sentence repeated. Begging, pleading, laughing. The boy said, "These are the ones who said no. She keeps them here, until they say yes." And the voices fell silent. When he entered, the doll vanished. No one saw it leave, but the boy's drawings showed where it went. Inside the walls. He drew it in every room, smiling, always closer to their beds. One morning, they found a seam in the wallpaper. Peeled it back. Nothing, but the wall was warm. And on the inside, someone had carved his name. Over and over. A faint glow came from the crawl space. Red, pulsing. The father opened it again. This time it was a tunnel, lined with bones, leading somewhere deeper. He heard his son's voice echoing from below. But his son stood behind him, smiling, and whispered, "Not everything that sounds like me is me." Then the light went out. Flames danced behind the walls. Not burning, just waiting. Smoke curled through vents, shaped like fingers. The boy stood calmly and said, "She's reliving the end. Before she starts again." Sarah screamed. Michael prayed, but the fire didn't touch them. It remembered them. And memories don't burn. They echo. At midnight the house sang. Floorboards hummed. Pipes trembled in tune. No lyrics, just melody. Haunting, beautiful. The boy stood in the center room and listened. He cried without blinking. She sings for those who stayed, for those who listened. Outside wind howled. Inside every object vibrated with memory. And the house sang louder, as if it had finally found its voice. The boy stopped speaking, only drew one final picture. A door, open wide. On the other side, figures without faces. Arms reaching, waiting. He placed it on the mantel, then lay down, and whispered, "She's ready now." The drawing faded overnight, as if it had never been there. But the door, it was open the next morning. The family stood at the threshold. Everything they feared, everything they remembered. Behind them, the boy took Sarah's hand. Michael looked back once, then stepped forward. The house didn't scream, didn't shake. It just closed its eyes and slept, for now, but beneath the floor, in a place no map showed. A whisper curled itself into dust, waiting for the next name. The rooms were quiet, furniture untouched, walls smooth, no voices, no whispers, just stillness. Neighbors assumed they'd moved. Another family gone. But at night, the windows glowed faintly, like eyes. The house had emptied, yes, but not forgotten. It was full now, full of memory, full of names, and still listening. They came from out of state. Young couple, no kids, smiling, looking for peace. The agent mentioned nothing. The price was a steal. They signed the papers, walked through the front door, and for a moment, the floor sighed. Just once, welcoming, the woman paused, looked up at the ceiling, and asked, "Did you hear that?" The first night, they noticed scratches on the kitchen window. Vertical lines, 12 of them. Fresh. The husband blamed a branch. The wife wasn't sure. That night, they heard a sound, like nails gently dragging glass. No wind, no trees nearby. And in the morning, 13 lines. No one spoke of it again. Unpacking boxes, they found a photo frame empty. No memory of buying it. No label. They placed it on a shelf anyway. The next day, a photo appeared inside. Them, taken from behind, in their living room. No camera had done it. No explanation. The wife smiled uneasily. This house really is something, isn't it? They checked the landline. One voicemail, but no one had the number yet. A woman's voice whispered, "She listens better when you sleep." They delighted it. Next day, same message, same voice. The husband unplugged the phone. Still it rang. At 3:12 a.m., a new voicemail arrived. It just said one word. Soon, the hallway closet never stayed closed. It opened slightly each night. The wife stuffed a towel under it. But still, they heard it. A soft inhale, a slower exhale, as if something inside needed rest. They opened it one morning. Empty, just coats, but the air was warm, and the wall inside pulsed, like lungs beneath plaster. After a hot shower, the mirror fogged, as expected, but then, two names appeared. Not theirs, one crossed out, the other underlined. They wiped it clean, but the names returned. Next day, their own names were added. Still faint, still unfinished, and in the corner of the mirror, 3 small letters etched in dust. ELS. At night, they smelled smoke, not fire, just the memory of burning. Sweet, faint, it clung to the curtains, to their clothes. One night the wife followed it, to the basement, the smell strongest at the stairs. She stood in the dark, heard soft laughter, and felt warmth not comforting, but familiar, like something had remembered her. They never told anyone their names. No neighbors, no mail yet. Still, one morning they woke to find them, scratched into the paint above the bed. Spelled perfectly. No smudges, no mistakes. The husband stared in silence. The wife asked, "Did you do this?" But deep down, she knew the house was simply introducing itself. The radio played without power. Old music, out of tune, a child's melody. They couldn't shut it off, couldn't trace the sound. One night, the wife hummed along, realized she knew it, but didn't know how. She asked her husband, "Did I sing this as a child?" He said nothing, because he'd heard the same tune. In his dreams, dust blew from the vent, then fabric, then something heavier, A doll dropped onto the floor, hand stitched with red thread, its eyes sewn shut, its mouth open. They'd never seen it before. The wife reached for it, but the doll moved first. Just a twitch, just enough. They left it alone, but it never stayed in one room. One window no longer showed daylight, only gray, an endless colorless fog. They tapped the glass. No sound. The wife pressed her hand to it, and something warm pressed back. 5 fingers. Small, precise. She screamed. But when the husband arrived, the fog was gone, and only her handprint remained. The cracks in the ceiling curved, gradually forming a grin. Paint peeled downward, like lips pulling wide. A smile, no mistake. They called it imagination, but the smile widened with each night. The walls settled differently. The floor creaked like laughter. And sometimes, just before sleep, the wife swore she could hear breathing through her pillow. It began as it always did. Wind through vents, but not quite wind. A whisper, saying the wife's name. Soft, patient, just once each night. She told herself it wasn't real. Until one night, it said her name, and added, "Do you remember me now?" She didn't, but deep down, a shiver told her she would. They stared. Of course they did. No reason to leave. The price was perfect. The neighborhood quiet. The whispers gentle. The house was patient. It always had been. One more couple. One more name. One more chance to remember. And as the clock struck 3:12 a.m., a voice in the walls smiled and said, "Let's begin again." The whisper changed. It no longer called her name. It used her voice. Perfect, echoing through the vents, through the drain, through the walls. The husband heard her singing from upstairs. But she was beside him. She said, "She's learning to speak like me. Soon I won't have to speak at all." And the house listened, closer than ever. The wife dreamed of the hallway. Endless, turning, repeating. She ran, doors passed, voices called, but each time she opened one, she saw herself asleep, in bed, smiling, watching. The dream ended only when she stopped running, and whispered, "I accept." She woke up gasping, not in her bed, but standing, in the real hallway. She noticed the mark on her wrist. Found a spiral, same one the boy once drew. It darkened each night, moved higher. She wore sleeves to hide it. But the house knew. Mirrors reflected it no matter what. The mark wasn't growing. It was remembering. And soon, it would finish drawing its memory on her. She heard it in a dream. Not her name, the one she had before. Before this life, before this house. It rang like a bell in her chest. And when she woke, she whispered it aloud. The walls creaked. The lights flickered. The husband asked what she said. She replied, "I think I used to live here. A long, long time ago." One room grew colder. Not by degrees, by decades. Old wallpaper surfaced. Furniture aged. Dust returned. The wife stepped inside, and her breath turned white. Photographs appeared, ones she never took, but somehow remembered. She whispered, "This is where I waited." In the house, paused, as if it remembered her too. The husband woke to a soft voice. Hers, calling, but she was asleep beside him. He pressed his ear to the wall. It whispered back, "Don't forget me." He asked who she was. The wall said, I was your wife. I still am. He turned toward the bed. She was gone, but her voice remained, growing louder. Photographs on the walls changed. Their faces aged backward, then vanished. Frames turned empty. The husband stood alone. No sound, no breath, only memory. The house whispered, she belonged to me. Now you do too. He dropped to his knees, and the floor opened, soft, inviting, ready to take one more. The front door locked itself. The knob vanished. Windows sealed. No exits. No escape. He pounded, screamed. No one heard, except the house, which replied with a whisper. Stay, not a threat, a promise, because the house never truly took. It waited until someone gave in. He found it under the bed. New thread, new eyes, new name stitched across the chest. His. The stitching was rough, but the smile was perfect. He held it, and the floor pulsed beneath him. The lights dimmed, and from inside the walls, 100 tiny voices whispered, now you understand. He put the doll back, but it followed him. Sleep never came again. Every time he closed his eyes, the house spoke, not in dreams. In fact, it told him its age, its victims, its first brick, its final name. He begged it to stop, but it said, you asked to know. So it kept talking, and he stayed awake. Forever, in the attic, one chair always faced the wall. He passed it every day. Then one night, it turned to face him. Nothing sat in it, but the cushions sank. The air smelled sweet, burned sugar. He turned away. The chair creaked, and the walls whispered. She's still watching, even now. His name slipped first, then her name, then his own reflection. Rooms rearranged, doors vanished, time looped, and when he called out, only his own voice returned. But younger, then older, then someone else entirely. The house said, memory is a gift. You gave it away. And in the silence, he finally understood. He was no longer someone. He was just another whisper. A camera on a timer flashed. No one touched it. The photo developed slowly. Grainy, dusty, 2 figures stood in the frame. Faint, blurry, smiling, him and her, but behind them, in the doorway, a child stared straight ahead. No face, no eyes, just a stitched mouth, holding a doll, with a name he no longer remembered. Online, the house goes up for sale again. New photos, no staging, no mention of history. Just one line. Quiet home with character. Available now. People click, people scroll, some pause, some feel drawn, and one, eventually, will book a showing. The house waits, silent, still, smiling. The house breathes in and forgets. Names fade, photos fall, marks scrub themselves away. All clean, all quiet, but beneath the floor, a box remains, closed, locked, humming softly. It holds the thread, the hair, the teeth, the names, and when it opens again, the house will remember everything and begin again, because that's what it was built for. No voices now, no footsteps, only the house, silent, patient, still full, still listening. Neighbors say it's empty, but dogs won't go near it, and birds never land on the roof. Something hums inside, not electric, organic, like thought, like waiting, And every night, at 3:12 a.m., the windows pulse once, like a heartbeat. A passerby sees a girl in the upstairs window. Pale, still, watching, he looks again. She's gone, but later, he draws her from memory. And the sketch matches a child. No one's seen for over a century. The same eyes, the same braid, the same stitched smile. And on her lap, a doll no one remembers making. The real estate agent smiles, says it's a simple listing. No history, great foundation, just needs love. He's said it before, says it every time. He doesn't believe it anymore. But the house likes the ritual. He feels it watching him. He never stays past dusk, never looks in the mirror afterward, and never listens to the vents. It happens the same way every time. The boxes arrive, the doors open, the laughter echoes. Then, the whisper, the very first one. Soft, crisp, a name, spoken from nowhere, yet landing right beside the ear. The new owner freezes, looks around, smiles, and whispers back, I must be imagining things. But the house knows. That's how every story starts. Inside the crawl space, beneath dust and time, the doll waits, still, watching, unblinking. It has changed names, changed hands, but never purpose. It remembers every child who held it, every name whispered into its fabric. And when the time comes, it will move again, toward the bed, toward the name, toward the beginning. In the heart of the house, where floorboards groan like lungs, she whispers, soft, certain, no anger, no fear, just remembrance. She always comes back. The voice says, and when she does, I remember too. Because this isn't a haunting, it's a reunion. In the house is never empty. Not really, just waiting for the next whisper.